Chapter 5. Lex was overseeing operations in the control center. Things were quiet. He was just starting to relax when Snidge entered.
"Senior Supervisor,"
Lex greeted him with as much tolerance as he could muster. Snidge took up a place behind the operations table.
"Where is the General?"
he asked.
"I do not know his precise whereabouts."
"Does he often leave his post for this amount of time?"
"The General is free to do whatever he wishes. He would never leave his post at a critical moment, and—"
Lex was cut short by the lights flickering. He turned back to the text.
"Report."
"Power fluctuation traced to Section 5,
the tech reported.
"Have engineers investigate,"
Lex ordered. A few moments passed and Lex was about to request a status report when the internal alarm sounded.
"What is happening?"
Lex demanded.
"Security alert has been activated by engineers. Your presence is requested, as is that of the General."
Lex looked at Snidge, who seemed unfazed by the commotion.
"Contact the General and inform him of the situation."
Ryuk landed outside the main entrance to the base. A security detail was there to meet him. "What is happening?" Ryuk asked. The squad leader matched his pace.
"While investigating a power fluctuation, engineers discovered a Dalek had been tampering with the power cables. The Dalek in question was electrocuted and destroyed."
"What? Who was it, and why were they tampering with the cables?" Ryuk demanded. The squad leader paused for a moment.
"It is best if you see for yourself."
They reached Section 5. The security waited outside the room as Ryuk entered. In the middle of the room stood a Dalek, badly burned, its speech indicators shattered and several sensor spheres destroyed. He walked around it, then froze as he realized who it was. "Mute!" he exclaimed. Just then he heard a commotion outside the room. He found Trip. "Oh no," Ryuk thought.
"General, what is happening?"
Ryuk sighed. "Let him enter," Ryuk ordered. The guards parted and Trip entered and instantly spotted Mute. Dead. "Yes, he received a fatal shock. I'm sorry, Trip." Ryuk hung his head as Trip examined what used to be his friend.
"No, this is not possible. He wouldn't interfere with the critical system, and definitely not alone. Something has to be going on."
Ryuk placed his hands on Trip's dome. "Calm down. There's nothing we can do for him now. Take him to the medical bay. I want a full examination." Trip was physically shaken, and he looked at Mute, and then at the General.
"I obey."
He and 3 other engineers lifted Mute's travel machine onto a transporter. Ryuk watched as they left, then looked around the room. As he did, he missed Snidge watching from the background. The Dalek slid silently away. He had double-checked the power fluctuation he set up would disguise the transmission he made to Skaro, informing Supreme Dalek Garen he was in position. This assignment should be an easy one. Find evidence of Ryuk's unfitness for command and report back, where the Emperor would be forced to recall Ryuk, and Snidge's contribution would be noted with a promotion to a full SPIE agent. It was unfortunate they had to destroy the silent Dalek, but the Empire would benefit from it in the end. Later that day, Ryuk was filling out some paperwork when the door to his office chimed. "Enter." Trip entered the room and stopped before the General. His eyes still hung low.
"General, I wish to apologize for my conduct earlier. It was unfit for a senior Dalek. I submit myself for punishment."
Trip's voice was low and without emotion. Ryuk put his work down and got up and met Trip's eye. "You have nothing to apologize for. I understand you and Mute were close. Other Daleks would not understand, but the range of emotions you and the other Daleks have to deal with make you stronger, but also mean you have to deal with far more pain than they ever would. In fact, it's what I want to talk to you about." Trip's eyes still raised.
"General?"
Ryuk leant back and tapped a control in his desk. A loud clunk came from the door as the blast doors lowered. At the same time, shields lowered over the windows. The lights in the office adjusted themselves to accommodate for the reduced natural light. Something isn't right about Mute's death. Trip moved closer. Ryuk's face was serious. "As you said, Mute wouldn't have been so reckless. I want you to begin an investigation. Watch everything, suspect everyone, but do not draw attention to yourself."
"What about the new Dalek, Snidge? He is a prime suspect."
Ryuk thought about that. "A little too convenient, but keep an eye on him. Report to me when you are able." Trip looked at the General.
"And when I find who is responsible?"
Ryuk smiled. "You will be free to do with them as you please." Later that day, Trip was in the engineering bay with Mute's travel machine. Trip had begun dismantling it to find any evidence A series of beeps came from his left side. He looked down to find one of the service bots. A squat cylinder about the diameter of a Dalek's dome and half the height of a standard fender. They were used to lay and inspect cables and components a Dalek couldn't get to without dismantling a wall or bulkhead. Ryuk had been tinkering with a couple of them and had somehow given them personalities, which in many ways made them more efficient, but also more troublesome as they preferred to do things their own way. This one Ryuk had nicknamed Blinky, was bumping into Trip's fender repeatedly.
"What do you want? I am in no mood for games,"
Trip said. Blinky's multi-tool rose from the top of his casing, like a scorpion's tail. Then he produced a tool that Trip did not recognize. The bot then moved to Mute's travel machine and inserted the tool into a small hole. A panel on Mute's side opened up, revealing a memory sphere.
"Son of a Thal!"
Trip exclaimed. Suddenly the door opened. Trip spun around to find Blaine standing there.
"I surrender,"
Blaine exclaimed, as Trip had raised the wrench in his claw to strike. Trip lowered the tool and Blaine came closer.
"Have you made any progress?"
Blaine was one of the few Daleks Mute didn't annoy. In fact, they were almost as close as he and Trip were. Mute spent many hours helping Blaine calibrate his cannon when he was transferred from a standard travel machine to the special weapons machine after the incident on the planet where the two humans had crashed and where Ryuk had been forced to destroy the insane wolf named Talon. Blaine joined Trip by Mute's side.
"Your timing as always is impeccable,"
Trip said, grabbing the memory sphere and gently pulling it out of its housing.
"It seems Mute left us evidence. His hardware memory was destroyed by the electrical discharge, and a synaptic probe did not reveal anything. But this sphere seems to have been isolated from all other systems, save for one connection to him."
"So we can find what happened to him?"
Blaine asked. Trip had a thought.
"Blaine, the General has entrusted me with an assignment to find the truth. I ask you to assist me."
Blaine moved back.
"I am not technically minded. If you want me to interrogate anyone, I am the Dalek for the job."
Trip almost laughed.
"I ask you to keep your eye open, watch everything, but do it casually. Do not give yourself away."
Blaine's gun twitched.
"And here I thought having a new world would free us from these kinds of situations."
Blaine muttered to himself.
"When we have dealt with this, we can say home sweet home."
Blaine turned and left the room, leaving Trip to work on the sphere.